Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have representatives from the Party for Socialism and Liberation Florida branch. So welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you. Let us get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Okay, yeah, my name is Garrett and Ruth. I joined the PSL in 2019. That's right when I was entering community college. I've always lived in the St. Petersburg area, which is in the middle section of Florida. Yeah, I've been with the party ever since. I'm 21 currently. I'm excited to talk about the party and more political developments.
Excellent. So kindly tell us what caused you to join the party.
Yeah. Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Hey, Ruth, the interview just is started.
Yeah, friends, we also have Hi, Ruth. We also have a Ruth Beltran who's also a member. So let us, before we get into that question we asked you, Garrett, Ruth, can you kindly give us a brief introduction to yourself, a biographical sketch?
Oh, sure, definitely, yes. So my name is Ruth Beltran. I am an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. I migrated here when I was in middle school. I grew up in the Bronx and ended up leaving the Bronx when I was 19 because it was very difficult to make ends meet. I had two jobs and I was still struggling just to put food on the table. So I ended up moving to Syracuse, New York. And I was in Syracuse for about 11 years. In Syracuse, I was able to work and have, Syracuse has a much lower cost of living. So I was able to work just one job and work full time. And go to school full time until I completed school. And then just because it's a small town and, the convenience of having a lower cost of living there, I ended up staying even after I finished college. Once I finished college, I had an opportunity to, not be as busy as I was when I was doing school and work full time. And I was able to look around and see all the problems that were affecting the community, my community at that time. And that is sort of what led me into organizing. And that's how I began getting involved with different organizations, fighting racism and just began fighting against different issues. And that's what brought me into organizing.
Sounds good. Thank you for the background, Ruth. Garrett, kindly tell us what led you to the PSL, and Ruth, kindly do the same.
Yeah, okay. So I joined the PSL just frankly because it was one of the first socialist parties that I came across. I started getting politicized once I entered community college. I'm part of the younger generation, one that's coming up. So a lot, it's not hard for us to see all the different issues in the U.S., just whether they be mental health or poverty or just environmental disasters that are taking place on a lot more regular basis now. Yeah, and through that, I guess I can answer why I stayed in the PSL for so long, though, even though it was one of the first socialist parties that I came across. I've been a consistent member since 2019. And that's just because of the quality of the work that the PSL does. Every member is placed to a high standard. We're expected to be committed to the different areas that we live and help out working class people and build working class political power. Just as important, probably more important than the daily acts that we do. Right.
Yes, and I joined PSL. It's an interesting story when I tell this story because I began organizing with PSL and answer.
Sorry, Ruth. It sounds like you're cutting out. Sorry. Hello?
I know she's on the road at the moment. It might take her a second to reconnect.
Okay, thanks for
Yes,
informing
is
me.
that better now? Can you hear me?
Yes, it's better.
Okay, perfect. Should I repeat myself?
Yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
Yes, perfect. So this is always an interesting story about how I joined PSL, because I organized with PSL and Answer Stone Coast for 4 to 5 years in Syracuse without joining them. However, then I moved to Florida, and once I moved to Florida, I began looking around for organizers and Answer Stone Coast again, so that I can organize with them, and that's how I ended up joining the party. I began organizing with Brian Ellis, who's one of our older comrades at the Tampa branch, and then from there, I began, through my friendship with him and through study groups, I began just learning more about the system and the system of capitalism and imperialism. And that began just raising my political consciousness and learning more about, our reality outside of reforms. So I decided to join PSL, and it has really been one of the best decisions of my life. I feel so empowered in organizing through PSL, in the organizing that we do. I just feel very empowered, and like, we can really fight back and organize to create the world that we want to live in.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to what Ruth said real quick. I mean, in the party, we're all united by our belief that capitalism, which is the economic system we live under, is the core thing that really drives all our society's issues. From everything I mentioned earlier, like poverty, the environmental destruction, mental health issues, no health care, just things like that. We're all united by that belief, and we're a multinational party. We also come from all different backgrounds, like how Ruth mentioned earlier. She's from the Bronx, or she immigrated to the Bronx and lived there for quite a while, and then came down to Sarasota. And I've always lived in the area. So
Sounds good. So kindly explain the campaigns and issues your branch is doing and working on in Florida.
okay, yeah. So we've had a number of campaigns. I think the one that we're most focused on right now, and then Ruth, I'll probably pivot to you, and you can talk about the radio show and then Liberation Breakfast. Has been the
Sure.
Tampa Tenants. Yeah, that'd be awesome. It's been the Tampa Tenants Union. We started organizing at Ascot Place Apartments, which is where I currently live, because there were a large amount of issues. Sewage was coming up from people's sinks and bathtubs. This complex was built in the 60s, so the piping is very, very old. Also, maintenance requests were being deleted. They weren't being fulfilled. And if they were fulfilled, it would take a week or two just to replace a light bulb or something simple like that. So a lot of the residents, began just to have to take money out of their paycheck for repairs in the apartment, which shouldn't be necessary, especially when you pay rent. I mean, that's the whole purpose of paying rent in the complex, is so that they can repair the things that need to be repaired. And so we started organizing. We started going door to door. We found that, a lot of the people had the same issues here. We created a demand letter, and we were able to get over 140 signatures at this point from all the residents that live here. It's a 241 unit complex at Ascot. And through that, management actually hired more maintenance workers, which was a key point of our demand letter. And I encourage people to look up Ascot Place Apartments, Tampa Tenants Union. There's been a few news stories that have been written about this by the Tampa Bay Times, which is a large regional newspaper, and then by a smaller, generally left-wing publisher called CL Tampa, which also did, an awesome write-up. But now, because we're still struggling at Ascot Place and still issuing demands and trying to extract more concessions from management, we're going on to Tampa. We actually established Tampa Tenants Union, which encompasses the whole city. We're great friends with St. Petersburg Tenants Union, which has been doing awesome work in the St. Pete area. There was actually a candidate in St. Pete that's running for mayor. His name's Robert Blackman, and he took over a complex a few years back, and now he's evicting members of that complex or those few units that have lived there for several years. And SBTU publicized that, and they got him to rescind the eviction notices, which was amazing. And currently, we're looking at different complexes to get involved with. There's a lot of bad landlords in the area, and hopefully we're going to be able to push back on that, and hold them accountable and just increase tenant power. Really, we're also in contact with tenant organizations in Miami and Orlando, just all over the state, and we're trying to kind of bring about a statewide tenants organization, maybe issue a tenants, Bill of Rights for Florida. I mean, it's such a bad place to be if you're a renter. It doesn't have the same protections as, say, California or New York, just like unions, really. So something that we care a lot about, and we're hopefully going to be able to improve upon. We've also had a campaign around the unemployment insurance that was recently cut. We held a press conference, and we've also talked to a lot of working class people in Pinellas specifically, which is the county that St. Pete is in, about the cuts to the unemployment insurance. And we ran a campaign based around that. Ultimately, the governor did cut the unemployment benefits, but we still publicized the issue, which was successful. I guess I can go to Ruth now, and she can talk about how it's been in Sarasota, where she lives with Brian, and the stuff that they do down there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So that's some of the things we worked on. We also worked very heavily on the Cancel the Rents campaign. We have that one going on for a very long time, because we felt that due to the pandemic, the rents should have been canceled, so that people were not pressed to move or accruing debt that was going to set them further back behind financially. So that's something else that we have worked on. We are also, in collaboration with other organizations, we are working on the BDS campaign, trying to put pressures on different organizations in the area to boycott and stop doing businesses with Israel. That's something else that we are working on. Prior to the pandemic, we also held once a month what's called Liberation Breakfast, which is sort of like a book and breakfast program where we come together and have breakfast, and eat and study with the community, kind of breaking bread together. We also have a radio show called The Ruthless Truth, which is in the community radio in Sarasota, which is WSLR 96.5 in Sarasota. And through that, we discuss political issues and, again, try to raise the political consciousness of people. Another campaign that we were very heavily involved, although we no longer are, was the campaign to defeat the HB1 bill that Governor DeSantis was passing and successfully passed here in Florida, which, we consider it to be an attack on protesters. Many people may remember that bill as the anti-protest bill, which basically looks to criminalize peaceful protesters just for engaging in the act of protesting the government. So we were very heavily involved in that campaign as well. But now we are very focused on the housing struggle, like Garrett mentioned. there's a great need for organization in that area. So we are trying to just organize in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And because Ruth mentioned her radio show, which is excellent, really encourage everyone to check that out. I mean, it's so informative. It's incredible. And they talk about issues that are topical and that are relatable. We're also involved in different protest movements when they pop up, like the recent Palestinian protests that occurred nationwide. There were large demonstrations in Tampa. We were heavily involved in that. And just in general, we try to provide political education through every step of what we do, really. Like, that's a huge aspect of being in the party. I mean, just historically look back at these different left-led movements, the civil rights movement, the great worker struggles in the 1930s that led to the formation of the Congress for Industrial Organizations, the CIO, which became the largest labor organization in the U.S. Political education was always a huge part, and socialists and communists played a huge role in that, in providing working class, popular education.
Since you mentioned labor unions, I wanted to ask you about PSL and labor unions. Most socialist and leftist parties and organizations support labor unions, so I imagine that you do. I looked at your stuff and I haven't seen the stuff I've looked at hasn't addressed labor unions, but I imagine you address it somewhere. So here's what I'm going to ask you about labor unions. The IWW, for example, believes labor unions are not all the same. They talk about business unions versus radical unions. So how does PSL view unions? Are they all good? Are some of them good? Or how do you approach unions?
Yeah. So there's a saying there, which is any labor union is better than no labor union. And that's our party stance. I mean, we encourage every member to get involved in workplace organizing, even if there currently isn't a union there, to try and create a union. But right, even for the case of existing unions, we encourage members to participate, to not break off and form a different union that has no basis of support. Of course, when you participate in the union, you want to influence that and bring it more to the left, make it more radical, really, like instill a kind of spirit of resistance in the union. If there's a history of business unionism, we all encourage that. But locally, we try and support labor unions whenever possible. I mean, currently the Frontier workers in Tampa are struggling against their employer, Frontier Communications, because their employer is being resistant and not offering a decent contract. I believe they're trying to keep the wages the same, and also there's cuts to their health care. And so they had a demonstration during the Super Bowl, and we went out to support that, to show solidarity with the workers, and who are in the IBEW. More recently, we have members involved with the ongoing SCIU campaign to help organize workers in the South, particularly at Tampa International Airport. There's an ongoing campaign there to get workers unionized, and of course we support that. We help out whenever possible.
Yes, we do. And we were also outspoken when Governor DeSantis was also trying to pass the anti-union bill. And we supported, I had some of the unions be part of the radio show and just help them gather support to defeat this, that terrible bill that was just looking to destroy the unions, really.
So the Party for Socialism and Liberation has a podcast called Liberation Audio, and it talks about various topics such as some that you've talked about today. Kindly explain to our audience what the podcast is all about.
Yeah, so we have a few podcasts. Liberation Audio is one. I believe that's the one that takes online segments from Liberation News, where we cover a large amount of topics. or a large number of topics, excuse me. And those are usually current event-wise. We also have Liberation in School, which I believe is a different podcast/audio, and that's up with the SoundCloud as well. And that covers more in-depth topics for political education, like what Marx, Lenin, what some of the Black Panthers wrote, things like that. We also have the Socialist program with Brian Becker. We have Breakthrough News on YouTube. There's also an audio format for that. We have a labor program specifically through Breakthrough News, which is called, I believe, The Picket Line with Monica Cruz. So we have like a huge amount of political education podcast because we want that stuff to be accessible, We want people to be able to listen to it when they're driving to work or when they're on the clock. Usually if the manager can't catch you, you can listen to something for a while. I used to work at Amazon, and we would they would frown upon it. They'd tell you to take out the earphone, but if you were careful enough, you would be able to listen to music or podcasts or something. But yeah, Ruth, would you add on anything to that?
No, I'm just grateful that we have so many resources and that people are able to, we facilitate people turning to alternative media to listen to news and to, get analysis on what's going on in our world. So I'm just very happy that we have that. People can read, but also, like Garrett mentioned, if you're just in your car or you're able to put your headphones on and work, it's easily accessible, which is great.
Sure. So one thing that people do all the time, I see on the internet, whatever their perspective is, they like to define socialism, communism, and you get various definitions, and I'm sure a lot of them would make you cringe. So kindly explain to our audience how you define socialism and communism.
Yeah, so we want the working class to have political power. That's, the simplest definition of socialism. It's not exactly government spending. We don't want a huge capitalist welfare state. At the same time, we support reforms like Medicare for all that will improve the lives of the working class. But fundamentally, we understand that our state, the U.S. government, and all its institutions, the intelligence agencies, the military, it's a repressive apparatus. The state needs to be demolished. I mean, we need a workers' state. We need a workers' government that answer to the voices of workers, that are representatives, that have representatives that are workers, come from the working class. Communism. Marx wrote about it. It's a later phase of socialism. It's after we have, abolished class differences, basically. It's when that material scarcity, everyone has access to stable housing, employment. No one wants for anything. Things like that would lead to full communism, the end of class contradictions. Ruth, would you add on anything to that?
No, I agree with everything that you say. I define socialism to help others understand that also as a society, where we have a society actually run for and by people. So, in contrast to the common, to our, where we have just rich and wealthy politicians making the calls and making decisions and laws to their advantage, writing it to the complete disadvantage of the working class. Under socialism, we will restructure society, not just to give the appearance that the work a new constitution and law that and that ensure that our society is for run for working people as well, where the needs of the working class, the needs of us as a collective, of our society as a collective, will be is prioritized by the Constitution. Communism, of course, it comes in later, like Garrett explained, but it's basically a political and economic theory, and that advocates for, for an end to classes, and also for the common ownership of the means of production.
Yeah.
This is usually how they're is through the ownership of private property. So he advocates for that so that we can have a real classless society, and a society that is run by and that benefits the working class and meets the needs of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to say that the party in particular, we heavily study the different people's movements that have occurred and that have, executed a revolution successfully. So in Russia, in China, in Cuba, in Vietnam, we learn from all these different places and try and synthesize and bring out the things that worked during these movements. Like, what can we apply to the U.S. and what can't we apply? And
Yes.
like Ruth said, I mean, just, a basic definition of the working class is the 99%. I mean, it's the people that don't own private property. That doesn't mean personal property. It doesn't mean, it's a joke online, like socialists are going to come and take your toothbrush. It's like, the aim isn't personal property. It really is like the means of production, like Ruth said. So the manufacturing facilities, the private hospitals, the different, factories that produce different things, the grocery stores, things like that. I mean, those things should be publicly owned. They should be directed towards the benefit of the working class. People shouldn't be, property, not property, but apartment complexes. That's what I was trying to say. You shouldn't have to expend 33%, 35% of your monthly income on rent. I mean, that's absolutely insane. But yeah.
Or another 10% on childcare, like many families are spending right now due to the continuous high prices. Yes, it will be. It's a complete society, one that I know many people struggle to imagine, because they are just used to the way things are run in the United States, and sometimes you feel a little hopeless. But once you understand that it doesn't have to be this way, that there are other ways that society can be organized, like in a socialist way that can benefit everyone, then you just gain such insight, and you feel hopeful that it can change. It doesn't have to be this way. It's only this way because this is what's benefiting the wealthy elite and the people that run this country and corporations. But in reality, once the working class decides to take power and to demand that the wealth in this country is distributed among everyone, it will be a complete different world, and you will see that we'll be able to fund so much. Like, we will have funding for everything that's missing right now, for school that affect our society today, for which we are told that there's just no funding.
All right. So kindly talk about how you encourage members of the party to practice socialism in their daily life. And let me give you an example. You can explain how you would approach this. Let's say I run a food truck and that's my livelihood. So how would I run a food truck in a way that would ensure I'm not exploiting others, that I am practicing socialism in my life?
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting question. There are workers cooperatives that work out really well. And when you mentioned the food truck, that's what came to mind. If you do have a workers cooperative, let's say you run it with two other people, and you're able to all provide for your families from there, and use the money that comes in, not just for your own benefit, but distribute that equally among all the workers, and And that's a way that you cannot exploit people, because they will actually be receiving what they make and not just the difference, right? And I say that in the sense that if you go work in a factory, you may make a given product and be paid $10 an hour, and the employer turns around and sells that product for $100 and pockets the difference, which is the $90. He pay you 10, and then $90 go to their pocket, and that's how they build wealth. But just imagine working in a place where the wealth is distributed among all the workers. That will be a great benefit. But to continue on the question of how I practice socialism, there are just so many ways that we can practice socialism. I'll give you an easy example. We can reject thoughts of exploitation. You know, the whole thought that exists in our society today that tells us that people are worth based on how much they earned, right? There is always like, what do you do for a living? How much money do you earn? And we tend to value people based on what they can produce and the amount of wealth that they have. So we completely reject that, and we understand that working class people, even those that are making minimum wage, are valuable members of our society and are not worth any less because they are making minimum wage versus the person that's making $30 an hour. So those are some ways, but also in our private lives. For example, at work, I always remind workers at every opportunity that they are the 99%, that we are the working class. And whenever there is an opportunity, such an opportunity that I had at my former employment, where management raised the production to the workload to a point where everyone working there was just overwhelmed with work, and we were able to join hands together. And it creates a little bit of an uncomfortable situation because we tend to be told not to share much about our employment, like we are told not to share how we but then we can have pay inequality being rampant. It was a little bit uncomfortable, but we did it. Like, I approached other workers and said, hey, we can join hands together if we get support of the majority, able to fight back against management. And we did that, and we were able to revert the new production policy to what it was before, and we were successful at that. So I think that that's a way to practice socialism. Just remembering that when we come together, we can be powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing is personal involvement wise, like our day to day, how do we practice socialism? Joining a party like the PSO, that has the greatest impact on the establishment of socialism and the struggle for socialism. Because when we coordinate with other working class people, that's our real strength. Our real strength is in our numbers because we don't own the means of production. We don't have great amounts of wealth, but we can coordinate, coherently with other working class people in an organization like the PSL, which is a real, working class party. It's a party for the workers. And through the party, we can establish other political education programs. We can ensure that, the needs of the working class, we can assist them. We can help them out where possible. And again, we can just help the struggle for socialism. We can help bring that about.
So how would somebody join the party and otherwise support your party?
Yeah. So to join the party, you can go to pslweb.org/join. We're also in the fundraising period. We're completely, as you can imagine, funded by member donations, charitable contributions from people who, can't exactly be involved with the party on a day-to-day basis due to, they have to take care of their kids, take care of their mother, anything like that, where they can't be as involved as they would like to be. They contribute to the party. Different friends of the party, different organizations that, like the work we do, and support it. That's called the National Fund Drive. We're in a period where public contributions are welcome. That's pslweb.org/NFD. Just $10, $25, it goes a long way. it helps us send organizers to branches, to newly formed branches, and assist them in the creation of a new branch. I mean, it's very difficult when you're the sole member of an organization in a city or a town, and don't have any contacts. You know, you're just getting started in organizing some of the times. So we're able to send, you know, experienced organizers to places like that and help them out and grow the branch. We're also able to produce all of the, you know, the great, excellent media content that we talked about earlier, and make it high quality, you know, like make it attractive and make people, you know, actually want to watch it. You know, it's not someone just strolling on for, you know, 45 minutes, an hour. It's actually, it's entertaining. I mean, they make learning very, you know, accessible, basically. Yeah, Ruth, would you add anything else?
No, but people, if you know, if you are, you can also be a friend of the party or join the party, like Garrett mentioned. But you can also join our different events or the different campaigns that we have going on. For example, in the housing campaign that Garrett mentioned, we have to do a lot of canvassing. We have to go out and, you know, just gather support and speak with different tenants. So people can also get involved in the different campaigns that we have, help out during protests, or become a donor and donate money, or even a patron where you can regularly donate to the party on a monthly basis. That's also, that can also be done in our website. And just continuing to help out when we organize for the different issues affecting the working class.
Thank you both for coming on the podcast today and sharing all the activities and the beliefs of your party. We appreciate hearing your views.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you for having us.
All the best to you and your party, and may you continue to flourish.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Bye now.
Bye.